I found out about this book. The gentleman's name is Franz Hassel. His daughter, that was born in 1943, a war child, Susie Hassel, wrote this book. And this is really an amazing book, well-written book. Very easy to read, but it encourages my faith in the Lord because those people, even though they were Seventh-day Adventists, one of the things that I've learned, because I immediately, when I found out about him, I wanted to know what made that man so faithful, and why was God so present in his life to protect him in the most horrific environment that a Christian can find themselves in. And that was during Nazi Germany. I mean, we have no concept of what it was like for Christian Germans during that time. It was hell on earth. And that's what we're going to get if we continue to allow all this Marxist, Leninist ideas into our nation, into our culture, letting all the Muslims come in and do whatever they want to. And the reason that's going to happen is because when we're no longer walking with the Lord, then all this stuff happens to us. I mean, it's just that simple. Now, I mentioned before, the reason for the Holocaust had little to do with the Germans, and it has to do with God dealing with his people. Like I had been mentioning from Habakkuk, it was not about punishment. It was not about God being in a way, he's angry, but not the way that we associate anger with. Because our anger is not righteous anger. When God is angry, it's righteous anger. And he's not out to punish us, to hurt us. He's out there to intervene in our lives in such a loving way that he can keep us from being destroyed.
Yeah, it's like to repent.
Why do you spank a child? Because you hate them? No, you spank them. A good parent, that is. A bad parent won't, but a good parent will spank a child because that child needs to know, needs to learn the lessons that are going to be valuable for them as they grow up. Because if you leave them alone and you don't, and let them do whatever they want to, you're not loving them.
That's right. And
God wouldn't be loving toward his people. And when I say his people, it's a type of situation that's going to be very difficult, especially for us to understand, because the real Zion is not Jerusalem in the land of Israel today. The real Zion is in the heavens. That's the new Jerusalem that's going to come down from heaven, and I'm going to go a little bit more into that today. The new Jerusalem, that's the real Zion. So I am a New Jerusalem Zionist. I am not a Zionist backing up the corrupt government that is in Israel right now, because those people are terrible. They're most of them are atheists. Now that got to be real careful. They're still God's people.
Yes.
And you don't sit around trying to treat them as though they were pagans or something like that. We love and honor them. We pray for them, and we definitely want to back up our Messianic Jewish brothers in Israel, because they get through a lot. They get persecution from their own family, from their own people.
Yeah.
And as you probably, some of you saw that, I have been encouraging people to email and petition the Israeli Department of Education, because they're shutting down the Messianic schools. And there's only one Messianic school in Tiberias, and they forced them to spend so much of the money. I mean, we're talking about over $200,000 on all these requirements, and then because they still wanted to shut them down, they said, well, you don't have enough people, so therefore we're shutting you down. So that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with corrupt governments. What was going on in Germany? The same thing. Corruption. First, moral corruption of the people. which is what we're facing today here in the United States.
Yes.
We're no different than the Germans were back then. In fact, I think in some ways we're more responsible because we have the lessons from history.
Yes.
We saw what happened with the Soviet Union. We saw what happened with Nazi Germany. We've seen what's happened with Cuba, Venezuela, all this Marxist dystopias.
Yes.
We should know better,
Yes.
but yet we don't. And therefore, God, in His loving kindness, He wanted to bring the people back to the land because He eventually is going to fulfill all the prophecies that are going to take place in the land of Israel.
Amen.
And that's when we pray for the salvation of Israel, because there will be a time in which they're going to take the baton again. Because we Gentiles, for a couple of millennia, we have been blessed because of Yeshua. Even though we went through the dark ages and we went through the western leg of the Roman Empire was a nightmare. And by the way, the eastern leg wasn't much better either. But that's a topic that I'm going to cover a little bit more. So let's go back now to this family. Franz Hassel, he was born sometime around 1899 because he was 40 years old when he was drafted into the German army. He was among the first to be drafted, and the reason why he was drafted, even though he was 40 years old in 1939, was because he had served in World War I. He was just a teenager. He never got to see any real fighting in World War I. He was just part of the new soldiers that were being prepared for the war. And therefore, he had the experience. He had been in the army, so that he wanted to immediately be drafted. However, there he is. Franz Hassel is the one all the way on the right, the one with his arms crossed. He's just a young kid, but he was a pretty stout guy. And he's quite an amazing guy. That's why I wanted to bring him up, because really I have a lot of respect and admiration for that man. And not only him, but for his wife, his family, because they demonstrated what it's like to be a faithful Christian and how to conquer the world. And they did. They conquered Hitler. They really did. Now, I asked several questions here. Why did I take so much time researching the life of Franz Hassel? That's one of the questions that I'm hoping to answer today. Why did I spend so much time? I read his book. I've read all these different documentaries that have been made on him. And I wanted to know what made him tick. Pardon the expression. I also wanted to know, since I knew he was a Seventh-day Adventist, and I knew that Desmond Doss was also a Seventh-day Adventist, and we know about Desmond Doss because we've seen the movie, what is it called? Hacksaw Ridge or something like that. And that movie only showed you just a little bit, but he was a man that was very faithful, and he conquered the world as a faithful Christian, and he was a Seventh-day Adventist. So I wanted to know, what is it? Is there something about the Seventh-day Adventists that had brought forth such faithful men and women? That's what I wanted to know. And of course, I did a lot of research on them. And then I found out the answer was not the Seventh-day Adventists. The answer was that they were faithful Christians.
Yes.
They believed. They understood the word, and they were faithful. Even though they were faithful to this somewhat legalistic system of keeping the Sabbath and the food laws and all that stuff. But that's not Paul has expressed to us not to get hung up on that stuff.
Yeah.
And if you have a brother that it's very important for them not to eat pork, and to do this and not do that and the other, be loving, be kind, be respectful, because that is a type of weakness. But if they believe that breaking those laws is sinful, then to them it is sinful, and they will remain faithful to what they believe. And that's what both of those two men did, and that's the reason why I found them so inspirational that I wanted to actually do a message on it because I believe we can learn from it. We all can learn, because here in the West, we think that, oh boy, if we got the right theology, if the pastor and the church and the denomination we're in has all this biblical stuff, that means that we must be okay. Well, we found out from the lies of the serpent, it doesn't make any difference. It's not what you have written as with your statement of faith. It's what you do, and that's one of the things that I like about the Eastern culture, the Jewish way of thinking, because in the Jewish culture of the Middle East, it is not what you say that is important. They could care less about what you say. They want to know, what do you do? What are your actions? Because your actions speak louder than words. And therefore, what you do is more important than what you say. Confessions are very important. But if they don't lead to good actions and to good works, then you got to re-examine and say, well, what am I really about? Talk to a politician. What does a politician do? We want to tell you everything you want to hear. You ask them a question, they give you a word salad as an answer. Basically, nonsense. Because they're not about you. They're about them and their particular goals.
Their agenda, yes.
Yes, and if we are not careful, we're going to be doing the same thing in our Christian walk, and that's what we need to stay away from. Ask yourself every day, what am I doing? Not what am I saying? What I say here today is not important. It's what I do, and how does it match with the Word of God? And will I practice it in my own life? And will it help other believers? Dallas equipped us, got us ready. It's been now 4 years.
4 years.
4 years.
Wow.
And we're still here. So those are the questions that I was trying to ask myself, and therefore we move on to the bullet points. Okay. So in 1939, we already mentioned that a 40-year-old Franz Hassel gets drafted. And you know, I can identify with that because I was drafted into the U.S. Army in 1973, late 73. I got my draft card to go. Remember, the United States was fighting in Vietnam, and I hated even the thought about going to Vietnam. So we'll go back to Franz Hassel. So he gets drafted, and he wound up being in harm's way from 1939 all the way to the end of the war. And what I mean by harm's way, I mean he was in the front lines because he wanted to be a medic, because he didn't want to be killing people. He wanted to be a medic, and they told him, no, in World War I, we equipped you on how to be a pioneer. A pioneer in the German army was the people that built the bridges and the structures ahead of the German army. And it was probably the most dangerous job that you could probably have in the German army, because you had to go out into enemy territory without the German army. That means you had to fend for yourself, try to build bridges and structures while they're shooting at you. And that's why the casualties among the pioneers was so heavy. His unit company 699 had 1,200 men, soldiers, and only 7 came back. Only 7. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? Hey, would you like to join the pioneers in the German army? Nobody in their right mind would say, sure, let me just join in and just go out there and get myself killed out there. Well, you know, there was a saying among the German soldiers back in World War II that if they fell out of favor with the Hitler or with the Nazi machinery, that they would be sent to the Eastern Front, because that was like, your odds of coming back are almost zero. You know, and so I know, all joking aside, it was extremely dangerous. Well, Franz Hassel didn't have a choice. He was put into pioneers. He had to go, and that's what he did. But he wanted to remain faithful, and he told them, you know, I'm a Seventh-day Adventist. I honor the Sabbath. That means Saturday. And of course, you can imagine what that did to him right away. He immediately became the target by everybody, not only his superiors, but also the people that were with him. They considered him a religious nut, and they had no respect for him. But let me tell you, once you got to know Franz Hassel, you got to respect him. His superiors, the more you knew him, the more you respected him, and even the soldiers that were serving with him. And maybe we'll get a little bit more into that. But basically, what he did, if you know anything about the history of that war, Stalingrad was a disaster for the German army. It was a slaughter. That was the beginning of the fall of the Third Reich. And then, of course, you move down to the Caucasus, all the way to the right bottom, and that's when they realized that they had lost the war. And then he had to take that bottom loop all the way back to Frankfurt, Germany. And here, one of the things that's very interesting about that is that, and I'm going to get into a little rabbit trail in here because I think it's important to understand what kind of man we're dealing with. He did so many things that he should have been, according to the Nazi rules for the soldiers, he should have been executed by firing squad for all the things that he did. Not because they were wrong, but because they went against the world. Basically, he found out, much to his horror, that he was an excellent marksman. When they put him out there on the firing range, he was a marksman. And you know what they want to do with you when you're a marksman? They want to put you out there so you can take out enemies. And he didn't want to do that. He said, I don't want to kill anyone. So he decided that he was going to take his revolver. Well, actually, it wasn't a revolver; it was a Luger pistol, and he threw it in the river.
Oh, wow.
That right there, if they would have found that out, they would have shot him. Believe me, because they shot other Germans that way too, for doing less than that. In fact, there was one gentleman that traded his pistol for some food because they were starving. Where they were in, I think they were in Poland, and when the commanding officer found out about it, they put him before a firing squad and they shot him and killed him. He said that was a law in the German army. You could not do that. Well, Franz Hassel had thrown away his pistol too, but what he did is, before he threw it away, he had built a wooden one. And he didn't do it, but he hired somebody to do it and painted it the same color and everything, and he put it. And the whole entire war, he had no gun with him whatsoever.
There he is.
And if they would have found that out, he would have been shot immediately. I'm telling you, this guy was risking his life every single day. Every time there was a Sabbath, what he did is he would trade with other soldiers duties so that he could keep honor the Sabbath, and he would sweeten the deal for anybody, so that the other soldiers were more than happy, because really most of the soldiers, they wanted Sundays, because Sundays there was something about Sundays that they liked better. So
they going to the bars?
Something like that. So he had a little bit of a challenge, but he was able to go through the whole war honoring the Sabbath. And he was able to do it, and it was not easy, believe me, in the German army of all things. And the Americans, when he finally surrendered to the Americans in 1945, his interrogator was a Jewish colonel, and he asked him, Franz, how in the world did you keep the Sabbath all that time? I'm a Jew in the American army, and I couldn't keep the Sabbath. I couldn't do it. How did you do it? And so he explained to him how he did it. One day there was an offensive where they were going to do some kind of an attack, which is very rare for the pioneers, because they were builders, not regular soldiers. They were soldiers, but they were builders. And he said to his commanding officer, today is the Sabbath. You're asking me to do that, and I don't do that on the Sabbath. So he disobeyed the order of his commanding. You know what that means in the German army? And in just about any army? You go before a firing squad. But his commanding officer had so much respect for him, he put him in a situation where he was either going to have him executed right there, or he was going to try to save him the best way he could. And that's what he chose to do. Because he had such respect for France that he said, I have to report you. You know, when you go back to Germany, you're going to be facing a firing squad. He said, I know. But I'm not going. It's the Sabbath today, and I'm not going. So that's what he did. So he wrote him up. They sent a letter. So that happened sometime during the war. It was probably toward the end. So he was keeping to his convictions the whole time. That's why he was so respected. Another thing that Franz Hassel did, being a pioneer, being ahead of the German army on the way to Russia, he would go into a town without letting his superior officers know what he was doing. He would go in, and he would look find the Jewish communities in those towns, and he would tell the Jews, you got to flee. Don't stay here, because the German army is right behind us. And when they come in, they're going to kill you. He said, especially those guys with the black uniforms that have this little skull and crossbones and on their hats. They're murderers. They'll kill you. And of course, we've mentioned this before. The tragedy is that most of the Jews did not believe him. Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons why they did not believe him was because they thought, if we leave, like he's saying, our properties and our farms and everything is going to get looted.
Yeah.
What difference does that make?
Yeah, at that point, what's your life for things?
I'm mentioning that because we are no different.
We're no different.
There's a hurricane coming. They warn people to get out. They won't. Most people, some do, some don't. But that's what happened. So he warned the Jews. And he saved many that way. There were many Jews that were saved. In fact, one time, by accident, he discovered, because he knew what was going on, sort of, but he actually got to witness. He saw the SS come in and take men, women, and children, shoot them, and put them in the trenches. He saw that. And so he waited until the SS left. Then he came back, risking his life the whole time, and tried to find for anybody that was still alive. He found a man that was still alive. He picked him up, took him out of the trench, and he was trying to bring him to safety when an SS lieutenant saw him and really was getting ready to kill him for doing that. And his lieutenant from the pioneer group, who was a devout Nazi, really, he said to him, Franz, he said, I'll take care of him. I'll take care of him. He took his pistol out, shot the man, killed him. That's a war crime, by the way. That's a war crime. And he basically saved Franz's life. So that's another miracle. He's trying to save people. He's not out there to kill anybody. He's out there to save people because that was his orders were from God, not from Hitler. So another situation that happened was, in one of the towns, when he was in the Soviet Union, they came into this one town and they were searching houses. They were searching for the Soviet soldiers. And he went up to this room, upstairs room in this house, and he looked underneath the bed, and there was a Russian soldier hidden under the bed. And he knew the fate of that soldier was going to be shot and killed. They were not prisoners. They weren't taking prisoners. So he basically, they looked at each other and he went, be quiet, stay put. He told, nobody up here, or I don't know what he said, but basically he saved that soldier's life. Now,
Oh,
why?
so I'm like, we're good.
Why is that so important? Because remember, it was his habit to go around warning people before the German army came by to to save the Jews. And one of those days that he was doing that, he ran into a unit of Russian soldiers. He would have been killed. He would have been killed, except the leader of that Russian group was the guy whose life he saved. And he told France, he said, you saved my life, and I will return the favor. I'm going to save your life. And they moved on. They left him alone.
Wow.
You see all the miracles that are happening here?
Yes.
Can there be any coincidence of any of these things? No. This is God's hand the whole time was protecting this man. And I mean, this is the kind of stuff that goes on. I know it's another situation that happened, and I guess it's just part of the way he was. Remember, he's a vegetarian. Where his unit was cut off. Now, this is getting toward the end of the war where they're really having a hard time. They're not getting support from Germany. They're on their own, really. And they were starving. They were really, literally, they were starving. No food to be found anywhere. And in France, he went out, and there was a cornfield. Remember, and you have to understand, back then in Germany, they didn't eat corn. I know that sounds weird, but they didn't have any concept of corn, like the way they used to think about tomatoes. So Frank Hassel, being a vegetarian, he took some corn husk and ate it, and it was sweet, but it was edible, and he ate it, and he liked it. It tasted good, even uncooked. It tasted to a starving person. Remember what the proverb says?
It tastes good even raw. I've had some kernels and it's good.
Wow.
When it's sweet.
As proverb says that to a starving man, even vinegar tastes sweet. I mean, honestly. So he went out. He took as many corns he could. Went to his unit, to his company, and said, "Guys, here's this. I know. I ate it, and it's good. It will save our lives." And all those soldiers said, we're not going to eat that trash. And Hans did something weird. He said, I tell you what, you take it, eat it, and if you don't like it, you can spit it right back on my face. And the guy said, well, okay, I guess, you can respect somebody who's like that. So they ate it, and of course,
something
they
never had.
You know what it's like for food, any kind of food for a starving person. They ate that corn. They went out there and he saved their life because they were starving to death. That's just giving you more, trying to paint a picture of what kind of guy he was. And I got a couple of more stories, but this one is very interesting. When he was in France in the beginning of the war, he went up to this. They were doing searching all these houses. They were, of course, searching for French resistance and soldiers and things like that. So he saw in this house a sewing machine. He saw a spool of thread on the sewing machine, and he took it and put it in his pocket. Because in Germany, that was very, 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 during the war, that was very important. Because if you had, you can repair your garments, and we have no concept of what it was like to be in a war situation, especially in Nazi Germany, especially when things got salty. But anyway, this is the beginning of the war, and he was still war, so it was very important to that threat. Well, the Holy Spirit convicted him and said, what you've done is not good. It's not right. So he went back the next day and put that thread right back where it was. Later on, when the German occupation of one of those small towns, I think it was in either Poland or Russia, the company, the soldiers in the company that he was with started to loot the towns that they went in. They were taking watches and everything they could. So Franz Hassel told his fellow soldiers, but anyway, he told them, you know what you're doing is not right. You should not be looting the people. You really need to respect people's properties and not do that. Well, his commanding officer found out about that. He reported this before he was to be executed, and he sent that forth about his conduct. Well, the German high command said, well, promote that guy because he's showing what German character should be. He's a good example of a German soldier. Promote him, and here it is. They had this Iron Cross, but it was a different type of Iron Cross. It was a medal that you gave soldiers that were outstanding in their conduct. So he got promoted and got this medal, and said, well, what's the significance of that? Very, very important, because that's, once again, the hand of God. Because he did that. Oh, by the way, right after he got that medal, a memoir came from high command in Germany saying the German soldiers are not to do that. They're not to go around looting and doing those type of things.
Oh.
And of course, that silenced all his critics at that point. All those people that had profited handsomely from looting. So he made them take it back. Well, anyway, but there was another benefit to that. And the other benefit was that because of his medal that he got, he was not to do any more manual labor. You know what that means? They made him a clerk, and because he was good at typing, and he was working for the Seventh-day Adventist publications in Germany back then. It's very small. Some Adventists were not very big in Germany, but anyway, so he had good clerical skills. So he was in charge of the money and all this other stuff. So he was in the office. So he was in the office with his captain, and so he was really out of harm's way. Because all these other guys are out there building bridges where they're being sniped at. Mm-hmm. Well, he was not even out there. He was actually where he was safe. Doesn't mean that you were safe all the time, because his sergeant, he noticed that every time they went out to a high-risk area, and France was with them, people would get shot and wounded and killed. France always came back without a scratch. And that happened again and again and again. And finally the sergeant said to him, France, you're my guardian angel. I want to have you, I want you to be with me everywhere I go. Whenever we go out there to a dangerous place, I want you right beside me. Because I don't know what you got, but this is no coincidence. And everybody gets killed and wounded, and you come back. And I mean, this is from 1939.
Wow.
So he did not know about the wooden gun.
Oh.
That'll come later. That's the kind of character that's the kind of stuff that was happening in his life. There was this one lieutenant, the one that committed the war crime by shooting that Jewish man and killing him, even though France was trying to save him. He hated France so much, and he kept telling him, your beliefs in the Bible and all that, you're only fools will believe any of that stuff. He was so antagonistic against France. He was his thorn in the flesh. Well, one day, France said something that really shook that whole company. In one of the arguments that he had with that lieutenant, he said, Hitler is not going to win this war. He's going to lose this war. And that was considered high treason. So the captain found out about it, and the captain now had to do something, because they wanted to lynch France for saying that. So he said, okay. All of a sudden, he calls France to a meeting, and there's that lieutenant, the one that his thorn in the flesh, the captain, and there might have been a couple of other people in that room. And he said, okay, France, you said that we're not going to win this war. And you know what that means. You know, there's this big complaint. We want to know what makes you think that we're going to lose this war. What you're seeing there, that's an actual postcard that France carried with him when he was baptized, I think 1921, I believe it tells you that. Yeah, 1921, when he was baptized, somebody gave him that card, and it had to do with Daniel chapter 2, the dream that Nebuchadnezzar had. And he carried that. And of course, you see on the right, you see it's written in German. He had typed the notes in German, his commentary on Daniel chapter 2 and the dream. Mm-hmm. So he said, the reason I believe that Germany, that the Nazis are not going to win this war is because of Daniel chapter 2. And he said to the captain, he said, Captain, you know, before the war, you were a professor of history. I want you to do me a favor. And this is kind of rhetorical. Mm-hmm. He said, correct me if I'm wrong, but let me tell you why. He said, so he began to explain to him the prophecy of Daniel in chapter 2, where he saw where this Nebuchadnezzar had this dream, and Astrid has gone through this a lot, so I'll try to, so my focus here is not so much on learning about this dream as to how this Daniel chapter 2 saved his life and the life of the people that got saved, because he convinced his captain based on Daniel chapter 2 that Hitler could not win the war. He said, because God had already revealed all the empires, and the last empires. You remember, you had the head of gold, you had the chest of silver, and the bronze, and the iron legs, and he explained all those things. Why they were significant with world empires. And remember, Hitler's claim was that his Third Reich was going to last 1,000 years. And France said, that cannot happen, because look at the feet of clay and iron. They don't mix. And we don't see this big, long 1,000-year Reich happening here at the feet of that statue. What you have is a very, very weak mixture of clay and iron. And of course, we know what that means. We know that is at the end, the Great Tribulation. You have the Antichrist. He's going to set up this world empire, and it's not going to last. I mean, we're talking about 7 years. When you compare with the Roman Empire that lasted over 1,000 years, even just the eastern part of the Roman Empire, after the fall of the western part of this Roman Empire, it still went for almost 1,000 years to 1453. But he did explain to him why he felt that was not going to happen. His commanding officer, his captain, said, "Friends, do you mind if I borrow your Bible? Because I'm going to look into this." And he did. He said, "No problem. I'll have another Bible." He took his notes, like the little postcard and everything, took it out. Well, based on the captain's understanding of history, he knew all about the Babylonian Empire, the Medo-Persians. He knew about the Alexander the Great. He knew about the history of Rome. He knew all this stuff, and he knew that it was exactly what Daniel had prophesied. And what France, why I keep trying to call him Hans?
It's okay.
Franz Hassel was explaining to him, and much to the horror of the lieutenant, the captain said, you know the things that you have said, because he had said about some people who told him how foolish it was for him to believe in the Bible. He said, what fool would believe such a thing? And the lieutenant's right there, and he said his ears turned cherry red, because he knew that he was the one that was making those accusations against the Bible. Well, France did not betray him. In fact, one of the things that France told that lieutenant, his adversary, he said, what you've done, you committed war crime, like shooting that man. But you know, I am not the one that's going to turn you in, because I am a Christian. I'm not going to turn you in for that. I can if I wanted to, but I'm not going to. And here's another thing that I wanted to mention. I forgot to mention earlier. Franz never joined the Nazi Party. He was never, and you have to understand, in Nazi Germany during the war, not to be a member of the Nazi Party was suicide. So both him and his wife especially suffered terribly because of them not being members of the Nazi Party. In fact, one time, because remember, just to let you know, if you were not a member of the Nazi Party, your rations during the war were reduced to a starvation level. Really, they could care less if you starved to death, because they were going to give all the food and everything to the members of the Nazi Party. And as though that wasn't bad enough, even the little rations they were supposed to get, they were not getting. So they had to depend on other people to share food with them. You can imagine how hard this was for that family in Frankfurt, Germany. And you have to understand something else about Frankfurt, Germany during the war. It was bombed, like 80% of the city was bombed to rubble. Except for one place, the apartment where they lived.
Yeah.
Bombs will destroy everything around them, but that apartment, the only thing that was broken was the windows, because the concussion of the bombs would blow shatter the windows. And as though that wasn't a miracle enough, looting was very common during that time, because people were starving, and there was the hard times. So it was practiced that if you weren't there, they assumed you were dead, and they would come in, they would take your stuff and food, whatever they could find. You know, their place never got broken into. I mean, they're sitting there unoccupied. And let me tell you why they were unoccupied. France is out there fighting this wars, conquering the Nazis. His wife was going through hell in Frankfurt, Germany, and she thought, you know what? The oldest son, Kurt, he said, let's go ahead and let him join the Hitler Youth, because if you are in Hitler Youth, you get all these privileges. Wrong. Kurt joined the Hitler Youth, and next thing you know, within a couple of weeks after he joined the Hitler Youth, this pimple-faced 17-year-old Hitler Youth leader knocks on their door and says to him, you know, you have been delinquent, you have not been showing up, there are Saturday meetings, and we want you to come and report with us immediately. And his mother, Helene, stepped up and said, I am the parent, and I decide what my son is going to do. And of course, that pimple-faced kid said, you're going to be in trouble, and blah, blah, and threatened her and all that kind of stuff. Curses, curses, curses. They left. So now they had a problem, because they knew that because his son was not attending the Hitler Youth rallies on Saturdays, that was going to be a problem, because they were going to take him by force and what they did with the Hitler Youth when they did that, the punishment was they were going to go in the regular army, and they knew that. And she said, I already got my husband in the German army. I don't want my son in the German army. And you know where they're going to send him? To the Eastern Front. So they fled to what part of Germany called the Black Forest. Now, Black Forest, for what I understand, the Black Forest in Germany is close to France. Well, she knew this Seventh-day Adventist lady, they call her Tante, which I believe in German, I think it means aunt. They call her Tante, aunt. I forget her name. And so they contacted her and said, look, we've got to flee Frankfurt, because they're gonna take my son away. So she said, come on over. So they fled to the Black Forest. And that's what saved their lives, because they were going to come after her son. But during that time also, another event happened that I must mention. pressure was getting so high. Anybody that was hiding any Jews, protecting any Jews in Frankfurt, Germany, or any part of Germany, was always in danger because the Gestapo and everybody becomes a spy in a police state. Everybody's a state. Talk to the Cubans. Tell them everybody's spying on you. That's the way it is in communist, Marxist places, Nazi Germany, and the United States.
Yeah.
We're required, they're telling us that we're required to have this real ID. Let me tell you, that is the police state wanting to watch over us. And we're following along like, oh, well, that's what the government wants us to do. We don't see the danger. Well, anyway, so this is a police state. So what happens is a neighbor comes to Helene and says, I have this teenage Jewish boy that we've been hiding, but they're onto us and they're going to take him away. We know that it's just any moment now they're going to come into my house and they're going to search my house and they're going to take him away. Will you take him? And she, of course, she knew that she was putting her life in as though they didn't have enough problems already. Now they're going to bring a Jewish boy into the house, and they did. And sure enough, the Gestapo came knocking on her door. We know you're hiding a Jew. The boy's hiding there in one of the rooms. She said, well, you're free to search my house, my apartment. And of course they look at each other, two Gestapo guys. You're hiding Jews, and we're gonna, they threaten him and all that, and tell us where he is. And he said, you're free to search my house. That went up 3 times. And they looked at each other in disgust and said, we're going to be watching you. And they left. They could have gone in, they could have found the guy. That's God's hand once again, protecting, because they would not only would have found the Jew, they would have been sent to a concentration camp or even worse for doing that. Well, her pearls of Pauline did not end with that, because soon after that, they were summoned by the Gestapo to what they in Frankfurt was called the Brown Building. The Brown Building was the headquarters of the Gestapo, and that is, people came in and they never came out. So she went in because they were going to interrogate her, and the guy that was the head of the Gestapo in that Brown Building was notorious to being the most horrible, cruel Nazi that you could imagine. I mean, this guy was satanic to the nth degree, and she knew, because everybody told her, "Oh, they summoned you to the Brown Building, and you're going to be seeing this guy." He said, "Nobody ever comes out alive. I mean, nobody comes out." So she told her children, "If I'm not here by 12 o'clock in the evening, each one of you," there were 3 of them. At this point, there were 3. There was Kurt with the oldest, then there was Gert and the girl. He said, and each one of you are going to be going to a separate place. None of you know where the other ones are going to be going. This is all your secret. Here's your money and the passes and where each one of you are going to go to hide. If I'm not here by a certain time, means that I'm not coming back. So you're going to have to fend for yourself." So she equipped all 3 of the kids very wisely. So if they caught one, they couldn't catch the other ones because none of them knew where the other ones were going to be. Right. Well, she goes into this building, and come to her surprise, and a pleasant surprise, the guy that she was supposed to have the appointment with was not available. They sent his substitute. And so the guy started asking Helene, what is this about this, that, and the other, and you're not obeying us, your son in the Hitler Youth, and you're not letting him participate in the Hitler Youth and all this other stuff. And so she explained to them and said, well, I'm a Seventh-day Adventist, and I don't believe, this is what I believe in. And the guy said, "You're a Seventh-day Adventist? Do you know this family? And she said, oh yeah, yes, they're good friends of ours. And he said, when I moved into this neighborhood, I met that couple, and they came and they brought us food. They were so good to us. They welcomed us to the community. This is years, before the war. And she said, I had such great love and respect for them. and and said, you know what? He said, all these accusations against you, I've already reviewed them. Go home. You don't have anything to worry about from us.
Wow.
Wow!
That's amazing.
Nobody comes out of the Brown building. She did. Of course, she got home at the nick of time because the kids were already getting ready to leave. And in fact, I think that she came in a little bit late, but the kids were still hoping that she came and they stayed. So she comes home. This is the kind of stuff that she had to go through.
Wow.
So anyway, so now moving forward I just had to mention that, to the Daniel's dream. So I want to get into Daniel's dream. But before I do that, I wanted to mention one other thing. Because the captain believed him, and because he read the scriptures and he knew history, he decided, this guy has a good point. And I'm in command of this company that if this war goes the way that Daniel predicted, then I'm going to have to provide for an escape, because if you remember that map, he was already deep into Russia. To escape was going to be impossible. So he saved 1/3 of the fuel and 1/3 of the vehicles.
Yes.
He served to make sure that if that was correct, they were not going to be caught in Russia, because he knew that if they got caught in Russia, they were never going to be seen ever again.
Yeah.
They knew enough about the Russians, and they had done enough crimes against the Russians that they knew that this was going to be bad. And the guy nobody's that stupid, especially people on the Eastern Front. They know that being caught and being a prisoner with the Russians was worse than death.
Mm-hmm.
So he did save. So in a way, Franz Hassel did made a way to escape based on his understanding of the scriptures.
Wow.
And that proved to be what saved their lives, because once they lost the war and they knew it, and all these Germans are trying to get back to Germany, without fuel, without vehicles, they got caught. Except for 7 of them. 7 of them made it all the way back to Frankfurt out of the 1,200 that had been killed, slaughtered. They made it back. And another miracle that happened too is when they finally reached the Americans and surrendered to the Americans, they said that they had another 30 minutes. If they had been delayed for just 30 more minutes, they would have been caught by the Russians. They said that they came at the nick of time. They drove in, surrendered, and that's one of the things. Remember I mentioned about that wooden pistol? So they surrendered to the Americans, and he took out that wooden pistol and he threw it along with the other weapons. And his sergeant looked at him and said, "Franz, you mean to tell me you've had a wooden gun this whole time? You never had a real gun?" and he said, I'm not out here to kill anybody. And yes, that's what I did. And of course, that impressed the Americans too. And one of the things that was interesting, I want to mention a couple of the side notes here. That sergeant, the one that said, "France, you're my guardian angel." When they were interrogated by the Americans, they would have them take their shirts off and raise their arms. Now, why would they want to? I mean, they already surrendered. They don't have any guns. Why would they have them take their shirts off and raise their arms? Why, Eddie? Because SS people had a tattoo under their arms that they were SS, and they were looking for the SS. And guess what? The sergeant had an SS
Oh,
tattoo.
no.
He had been in the SS and somehow something didn't work out and he fell out of grace with the SS and they sent him to the Pioneer Company, basically a death sentence.
Yeah.
So they took him, of course, Hans had tried to do everything to protect him.
Wow.
So really saved that guy's life too. I don't think the Americans were executing all the SS guys, but they had to denazify them, and they wanted to make sure that if they had committed war crimes, that they were going to be charged with war crimes. This guy, as far as we know, did not, but the lieutenant did. And what happened was, after the war, Germany had this rule that if you were in school, because the kids were going back to school, and you wanted to go to a higher level, to university, that you had to have a certain grade for you to go on to university studies. But their kids were not meeting those requirements because they were giving them the exams on Saturdays, and there was all this stuff going on Saturdays, and without it, they didn't have a chance to get a good grade. So they were going to, so the rule was, remember, after World War II, Germany's crawling with Nazis. They didn't just go away because Hitler committed suicide. They was crawling with Nazis, and they still were persecuting the Christians, and it was a nightmare. It was a nightmare to be in Germany at that time, even after the war, especially. So they went to a courthouse. Franz Hassel went to the courthouse to try to do something about trying to do something for their kids, because they were going to be sent to a trade school, because they could not be going to university because the way the system was set up, there was no way that they could go to university. So while he was in the courthouse, he runs into Lieutenant, his adversary, his thorn in the flesh, the one that committed war crimes. And they were going to try him for war crimes because they knew somebody snitched on him. And so he runs into the lieutenant says, you know, I'm here, I've been charged with war crimes. And so the judge, when he found out that Franz Hassel was in his companies, brought him into court and said, we want to ask you about this lieutenant, about war crimes that he committed, and would you give a testimony of his war crimes that he'd been accused of? And Franz Hassel went up and told the judge, I am a Christian, and I will not be part of this inquiry, so you'll have to do without my testimony. And he walked. You know how hard that was for him to do? Because that right there is what forgiveness is about.
Wow.
That's what forgiveness is. Franz Hassel was not going to let this bitterness rule his life. Mm-hmm. He had forgiven that lieutenant, and he kept his word. I don't know what happened to that lieutenant. I'm sure that he was charged with war crimes because somebody else snitched on him. But it wasn't Franz that did it. That's just another little side note of how to give you an idea of what kind of man this is. Now,
you saw, O king, and behold, a great image. This image, mighty and of exceeding brightness, stood before you, and its appearance was frightening. The head of this image was of fine gold, its chest and arms of silver, its middle and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. As you looked, a stone was cut out by no human hand, and it struck the image on its feet of iron and clay, and broke them in pieces. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold, all together were broken in pieces, and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors. And the wind carried them away, so that not a trace of them could be found. But the stone that struck the image became a great mountain, and filled the whole earth.
Wow, can you imagine that? 4 short verses tell you the whole history from Babylon to the end, when the Antichrist will be pulverized. Okay, so we have the head of gold. He's interpreting, said, you are the head of gold. Nebuchadnezzar is an idolater, just like the rest of Babylon, extremely heavy into idolatry. That statue was fitted perfect with their worldview. And the idea that he was the head of gold was so pat yourself on the back.
Yeah.
I'm the greatest. Muhammad Ali.
No one in the
You
world.
know, that just took his ego to the roof. And God had a reason for that, doing that. But you have to realize something. He might have been the head of gold. And gold is more valuable than silver and bronze and iron. But it's the weakest of all the metals that was mentioned
Yeah,
here, of all
right.
the substances here.
Wow.
And his kingdom was only 43 years. Nebuchadnezzar, that was it. That was from 605 to 562 BC. That's it. 23 years. I'm sorry.
23
43 years. The other 23 years
66.
that were related to Babylon and the Jewish exile to Babylon were by his nephew and all that kind of stuff. Or grandson, excuse me, not nephew, the grandson. So really, it was just a very short reign, 43 years. Actually, David ruled 40 years as king. So but it was a short kingdom. But he was still the head of gold, and boy, that he loved that. And then Daniel 2:39 says, "Another kingdom inferior to you shall arise after you, and yet a third kingdom of bronze, which shall rule all over the whole earth." Okay, so that was Daniel 2:39. So we looking at the Medo Persians, which were the silver chess. They actually, that kingdom, that empire was actually 200 years, over 200 years. And they ruled basically from 539 to 331 BC. So that was a couple of hundred years. So
Yeah.
they're lasting longer, but they're not as valuable, but they are stronger. So you're seeing this increase in strength, decrease in value. And then we go to Daniel 2:40, and there shall be a fourth kingdom of strong as iron, because iron breaks to pieces and shatters all things, and like iron it crushes it, shall break it and crush all this. So the iron, which we know is Rome, will crush and destroy all these other ones. Will be stronger, but yet less valuable. And they lasted quite a bit. The western leg of the Roman Empire were called the Principate faiths. That's what they called it. It was 503 years approximately, from 27 BC to 476 AD. And remember, what happened in 27 BC? What happened in Rome in 27 BC that was significant to the dream of Daniel? That's when the son. No, actually, it wasn't the son. It was the nephew of Julius Caesar became the first emperor of Rome. See, Julius Caesar was trying to become it. He never made it. His nephew did. And that's what began the Roman Empire, because now it was a dictatorship. It wasn't a republic anymore. So anyway, so that was 503 years. Then you have the eastern leg, which was the Byzantine Empire. And that one, according to the historians and all that, there's always some debate as to fine points on this. But basically, that one lasted 977 years. From 476 AD to 1453 AD. So, of course, if you put the Roman Empire, the two of them together, you have close to 1,500 years. So that was stronger, lasted longer, but it was less valuable. And it didn't come completely to an end, because...
And as you saw the feet and toes, partly of potter's clay and partly of iron, it shall be a divided kingdom. But some of the firmness of iron shall be in it, just as you saw iron mixed with soft clay. And as the toes of the feet were partly iron and partly clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly brittle. As you saw the iron mixed with soft clay, so they will mix with one another in marriage, but they will not hold together, just as iron does not mix with clay. And in the days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that shall never be destroyed, nor shall the kingdom be left to another people. It shall break in pieces all these kingdoms and bring them to an end, and it shall stand forever. Just as you saw that a stone was cut from a mountain by no human hand, and that it broke in pieces the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold, a great God has made known to the king what shall be after this. The dream is certain, and its interpretation sure.
That is wonderful.
Wow.
We see the earthly kingdoms come to nothing. That stone that was not carved by human hands. Who is the rock, the stone?
Oh, yeah.
It's Jesus Christ.
Always through the Bible. Is the
He
rock.
comes in and he will pulverize all those pagan empires and kingdoms. And he'll establish the kingdom of God, the New Jerusalem, this mountain. And remember it said that it would become a mountain? Well, guess in Bible prophecy, what is a mountain? Usually referred to Jerusalem. Except this time it's the New Jerusalem. Not the one that's out there right now.
No.
The New Jerusalem. That's the God's kingdom.
Yes.
So he's showing us that all these kingdoms, of course, we know from the what we're talking about, Franz Hassel and his situation, he saw that this kingdom of the Antichrist was going to be short-lived. It wasn't 1,000 years, and it was divided. It was a divided kingdom. First of all, you had the two legs, the Western and Eastern Roman Empire, and then you had the feet of clay and iron.
Can't support anything.
They don't mix, and they're very weak, and that's where the Antichrist comes in.
Wow.
And he thinks he's going to have 1,000-year empire too. Like the globalists today, the globalists all still think that they're going to have this utopia for the elite, and that they can just throw God and brush him off the side, and they can be gods and masters, and the stuff that these globalists are thinking about doing, human engineering, bioengineering, and doing all that. They want to create this robot-like people. I mean, these people have all these demonic plans for us. That's why the Bill Gates and his vaccines that are doing nothing but killing people, especially in the third world countries that they have done. So the globalists always are trying to pursue their utopias, but all they bring is hell on earth. It's all they do. So we see that we saw the end of the Hitler's 1,000-year reign, or Reich. We have seen the Soviet Union come and go, basically. We have seen Cuba, we have seen North Korea, we have seen Venezuela, and we have seen what's happening in Europe right now, and we're seeing what's happening in Canada, United States.
What about Islam? What about Islam?
Well, yeah, because of the Islam. And you know, the interesting thing is that we don't see Islam here in the end. So something is going to happen. But that doesn't mean that we're off the hook. Because look what's happening in Syria right now. They're hell-bent on killing the Christians and even the people that they don't like, that are even among the Muslims. So this world is in such turmoil. And what is the lesson here? To me, the lesson is that the world can be conquered only by the faithful Christian. And what I mean by conquering the world, I'm not talking about conquering with arms and like Islam does. We're talking about conquering the world in our lives. And if we conquer the world in our lives, God is able to move through us, even if you're a Seventh-day Adventist, which I never mentioned because I had done some messages on this before, 2 of them, on the Seventh-day Adventists. And let me tell you, when you look at Ellen G. White and her teachings is demonic, but they have been very successful. You go to their website, they make sure they present themselves as Orthodox Christianity, which they're not. But the people at the bottom, especially in third world countries, they get to read the Bible. They get to study biblical Christianity. And so long as they stay at the lower level, they can be Christians, no problem. follow those food laws and all that other stuff. That's what those Franz Hassel, Desmond Doss, his wife, they were faithful Christians.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy read through the Bible 89 times.
Wow.
89 times. He's got me beaten. I haven't read the Bible through it 89 times.
You have to read it more than once a year in your life.
I go through the Bible, Genesis to Revelation, approximately 25 times a year. Okay. I haven't caught up with him yet. I'm close to it, but I'm not. But then again, I have advantages that Franz didn't have.
Yeah.
Franz didn't have the advantage of in his fingertips, in that phone that he's got. I can go to Bible Gate, and I can underline, highlight scriptures, save and have notes, listen to it, read it, study it right on my hands. I don't have to go to my computer to do this, and I do this all the time.
And go to the Hebrew.
Yes, and I look at Hebrew, and of course, because I study the scriptures, I go through the whole Bible in English and Spanish, and I do them side by side. So if it's a long book like Genesis, I'll do the whole thing in English, and then I do the whole thing in Spanish, because when I put the two of them together, I can get a better understanding of what the Hebrew word is. And then when I look at the Hebrew and say, well, look at this, I now know what that Hebrew word is, because in English and Spanish, put them together, and then I get a good picture of what that Hebrew word is. So all these are our fingertips.
Yeah.
We have no excuse. The reason why we are ignorant right now of the scriptures is because we choose to be ignorant. You start following YouTube and all those, or TikTok and all those theologians garbage that's on there. The only way you're going to be protected against that nonsense is to know the word, because if you know the word, all this other stuff would immediately begin to raise red flags. And you're not going to get the red flags if you're not in the word. And I'm not saying this to boast about me or anything like that, because I can tell you, I cannot compare myself to this gentleman. I mean, I have great admiration for this man to do what he did with the little that he had. It puts the rest of us to shame. And my reason for doing this is not to bring shame of anybody, but to encourage believers in Yeshua. You have the same opportunity, and even greater than Franz did. And by the way, we may come into a situation where we're going
through
That's
it.
what's gonna
Amen.
we're going to have to make some decisions that are going to cost us our jobs, our ability to travel, which is they've already impinging on that, our ability to get proper medication and even food. And when we get into the electronic currency, it's done. The government now is in total control. We're in a police state, and they can get rid of us easily. They don't even have to go and get the Gestapo to come and take us to a concentration camp. They don't need to do any of that stuff. So my encouragement is, through this lesson, is the reason why this man with God was so evident in his life is because he was a faithful Christian, and because he was a faithful Christian and he knew the word, he conquered his world. Now,
And he a lot of people around him too.
yes, and now we may have to pay with our lives. We might. But the question is, do we love our lives more than God? If we do, I encourage you to examine yourself, because eternity, we look toward the kingdom of God, one kingdom that pulverized all these other kingdoms. The kingdom of God is, by the way, unlike the other kingdoms, its value is infinitely greater, and its strength is infinitely greater, and its endurance is